Hello and welcome to BW Money World. I'm Anirudh Bose. The subject of today's discussion is a very relevant one. We're going to try and make sense of mutual funds in the current environment where COVID-19 has wreaked havoc onto everybody's portfolios. I'm sure everybody's got a lot of questions. So just to give a brief background, it's been a crazy time. It's been a very confusing time for investors. I speak from first-hand experience. It's been a roller coaster ride all the way since March when the markets peaked in February, and then March saw a fall which nobody's ever seen before. We saw stocks falling 40-50%, and just when doomsday predictions were all over the place, the markets did an about face. I personally came across people who said the Nifty is going to hit 1,000. I said, hey, it's not going to hit 1,000, but you never know. So just when everything seemed really, really bad, markets have done an about face and now have recovered like 30-40%. To make things even more complicated, debt funds haven't done very well. Rather, they have done well, but there's been a lot of bad press surrounding them with the fund shutdowns that have taken place. So my understanding is even safe investors are a bit flummoxed as to where they should park their money. So we have with us today an expert, a subject matter expert, Radhika Gupta, MD and CEO, Edelweiss Asset Management Company, and she's going to help us make sense of this whole muddle. And thank you so much for joining us, Radhika. How are you today?
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for taking time out. So I'm going to jump right in, Radhika. I have a few questions, and I speak on behalf of investors who will be seeing this recording. What is going to happen to the markets? I know it's a question that nobody can really answer, but if you had to take a guess, would it be a neutral kind of a range-bound scenario we're looking at? Would it be a bear market where this is basically nothing but a dead cat bounce and a relief rally which is going to taper off very fast? Or do you say this has been a crazy kind of an accelerated bear market where the fast-forward button was pressed, the worst is behind us, and now it's all going to be good for the next 2-3 years? What would you say? Because that's the question many investors are asking right now, Radhika.
So I think it's a difficult question, and the only answer is that there is no answer. I know this is not the popular thing to say, but if COVID-19 and the year 2020 has taught you anything, it's that our ability to predict markets is something that, as experts and as investors, both we don't have much ability. And I think we should humbly recognize that. What you saw in March was a crash that was large for many investors who started investing for the first time after 2008. It probably felt like, what is going on? I've never seen these kind of moves.
Exactly.
And it happened globally. What you've seen thereafter is a rally that has been just as sharp, and it's been fueled by some very interesting indicators and essentially we are living in a liquidity fueled world. Interest rates are zero. So asset prices are moving where they are. There's a significant amount of retail participation chasing actually, random stocks and doing direct stock trading. So it's a liquidity driven rally that we are seeing.
Right.
Whether it's sustainable or not, very difficult to say. I like to look at markets in terms of frameworks. And I think at this point, if you look at India and if you look at the economic conditions, obviously the last quarter of results was disappointing, and I think the first quarter will continue to be disappointing.
Yes.
But while you have poor results on one hand, you have the Fed and liquidity on the other. So markets are these counterbalancing forces. It's very, very difficult to predict. Are we at the cheapest levels of market valuations today? Definitely not. In fact, if on anything, we might be slightly on the more expensive side.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's where we stand in terms of markets. And markets, two things I would just end with saying that markets, one, are volatile. Volatility is a feature of markets. It is not a bump. I mean, there have been times in market history when markets have crashed 76%. This happened in the late 20s in the
Correct.
US. So this is, so that is one thing to keep in mind. And second, markets don't move in line with economic reality at all points in time. They can be disconnected from fundamentals for periods of time. And that's something is asked for investors to remember.
In fact, they usually are. If you go by what Benjamin Graham said about Mr. Market being either overly emotional on either side, either over exuberant or over depressed. So, given that you're absolutely right, there's no certainty with at least the near-term direction of the market, and you're even saying that valuations-wise, we're not exactly. The question everyone's asking is, what should we do? Okay, let me take the example of two different investors. Let's say there's one investor who's been very patient, who's been running his SIPs for the last 5 years and is, let's say, sitting on a flat return, which is something which is happening for the first time in forever. The second investor is somebody who took an opportunistic bet in March when the markets fell to 7,500 or 8,000 and then got in. So what should both these investors do? What should the patient guy do and what should the opportunistic guy do? Is this the time to book profits and get out, or is this the time to be actually getting in? Because fact is, we're still 25-30% above the Fed peaks. So there's a lot of confusion. So I mean, if you to advise investors on what to do with their money, let's say I'm sitting with a lump sum of money, what should I do? And if I've already invested and I'm sitting on a 30% return, what should I do?
So let's start with investor one, I think, and then we'll come to the end. I think investor one is a lot of investors who are SIP investors, and I would tell investor one two things. One, it's good you've held on to your 5-year SIPs. Do remember that when you judge these numbers on your returns and you feel like, oh yeah, mera FD wala return bhi nahi bana, and these things come to mind, right?
It does naturally.
Yeah, don't try to make that assessment logically at the end of or in the middle of what I would say has been a significant crash and significant bear market. It's really like someone doing your appraisal of 12 months basis 1 month of bad performance. Don't do that. Don't judge markets on the tops or on the bottoms. Try to judge them on the average. I always say these discrete, 1 year, 3 year returns, I mean, they don't make sense. You have to show rolling kind of returns and what the average experience has been. I did some interesting analysis that might help investor one. For a 10-year investor, SIP investor, and I think when you do SIPs, you have longer term goals. In the scenario that markets gave even 0 to 8%, which is a really low return over 10 years,
exactly.
Average market returns are 6%, your SIP returns are still 9-10%. So to the patient investor, I would say hold on. You actually get the benefit of SIPs at this point in time. In fact, your recovery when markets recover will be faster as an SIP investor, because finally the benefit of investing at lower tranches is kicking in. So that's my advice to investor one. I think investor two is an interesting one. I think this is not a market to be a hero, and that's why I don't like what investor two has done, or I don't advise what that, while market valuations in March were low, these are uncertain times. There is no vaccine out for COVID. It's an event that people can't grapple with. I think we can grapple with the failure of a bank because we've seen that model before, but we can't grapple with a health crisis. So I think investor two really has something, to think about. Obviously, if you're investing in equities, you have to invest with a 5-10 year horizon. And if you have jumped in March, you have to remember your 5-year horizon. You can't do this as a short-term thing. That said, if anyone asks me for advice on investing in equities, my first one is don't be a hero. If you have 10 crores to invest or 1 crore or 1 lakh, don't do it in one go. Do it staggered. In fact, we launched a feature at Edelweiss Mutual Fund recently where you can stagger investments over 6 months, 12 months. Do that because it's
a step feature, is it?
Yes, the step feature, exactly. The step in and step out feature. Yes. We really think it's a time to do that kind of stuff rather than jumping whole hog. Because when you jump in whole hog, you get investor too.
Sorry, Raj, I'm going to put you in a difficult spot again with a tricky question now. And this is a real question that came to me the other day. So I'm going to ask you for some advice. Now, there's a guy who's been running a SIP for the last 5 years, all right? And he decided to do it for a predefined goal, which is his child's education. And we thought 7 years is a fairly decent time. So we started his SIP off in a mid-cap fund. And 5 years later, he's sitting on a negative kind of flattish return. And given that the next couple of years are now going to be uncertain, what should this person do? Should he now just play it safe and get out? Because his goal is 2 years away and he just has to get out in 2 years anyway. He doesn't have a 5-year horizon from today. So what does such a person do, Radhika?
So I think if someone is sitting today, your chances of equity market returns being a little more front-loaded are probably okay. My advice to him would be that he should continue for 2 years. I think, while markets are not at their cheapest, they're not at their highest as well. So your risk rewards are probably in favor. If you're in mid and small cap, I think you said you're an SIP into mid cap fund.
Yes.
Then definitely your risk rewards are in your favor because mid and small caps have underperformed large caps for a long period of time. So that would be my view to this investor. And sometimes you do have these scenarios that are unfortunate where you have goals and sometimes the goals have to be extended because something like COVID-19 happens.
Correct. Fair enough. So in a nutshell, I think that makes things a lot clearer. So the opportunistic guy should sit tight for the next few years and remember that equities are 5 years. The SIP investor should continue. and the mid-cap investor who's waited out for 5 years but has a 2-year kind of horizon should also continue, given that we're kind of middle of the road valuations. We're not really still near the highs. So this is what you feel that the person should do, is it?
Yeah, I generally think, there's a quote I heard somewhere, I don't know who's by, that a storm is not the greatest time to change sails and take great strategic decisions. It's a time to survive. And I would encourage investors to survive it out.
Excellent. That makes things a lot clearer, Radhika. Now, my next question is, again, a difficult one. All questions are difficult these days. Now, so debt funds have traditionally been the safe haven, right? And they've been the place where, I know my own relatives who retired, they've relied on debt funds very heavily over the last 3-4 years, and the returns have been fairly decent, barring the odd shock where NAVs have fallen 50% overnight. But that's not the par for the course. That is something which is an outlier. But with what's happened recently, and there's so much uncertainty about whether companies will be able to pay back their loans or not, whether a restructuring is in order, how many AAAs will really not be AAAs at the end of this, is something which many people are debating, including myself, because ultimately ratings are all they're all lagging, right? Even your IL&FS and DHFL were all AAAs. So there's a lot of fear and uncertainty in terms of what to do with short-term. Now, make matters worse, FD rates are 5.5%. So where does someone who's got, let's say, a year or two kind of a horizon and doesn't want to take much of a risk, and is skeptical about a corporate bond fund? The gilt funds, as you know, are volatile and have already rallied significantly. So getting in right now, I would assume there are risks involved. You can give me your point of view on that. So what does a kind of a short-term, retired, safe player do? Is arbitrage a good option? I know I've thrown a lot of questions at you. If you just imagine if I'm a short-term, risk-averse kind of an investor, what mutual funds do I get into right now?
So I'll start by sharing some comments, because I think debt is a super important space, and then I'll end this answer with a formula that you could try and follow for debt investing, a framework I like to use for my personal money. So one, I think investors have gone through a lot with debt, and I empathize and I understand, and I do believe a debt investor's life has been at least optically more challenging than an equity investor's life.
Exactly.
So I absolutely understand.
Because a debt investor doesn't exactly get in thinking he's going to see a downside of 20-30%.
We are FD investors. We want to bank में जाके पैसा डालेंगे तो इतने साल में इतना मिलेगा. That is broadly itna. And unfortunately, and I'm saying this as an MF CEO, our industry also makes things complicated because we have 16 categories of debt funds. Now, you are just looking for a savings account and some FDs, and you've got all this. And
there used to be 50. 16 is after condensation, is it?
But you don't know whether I should do a floater fund or a medium-term fund or whatever.
Absolutely.
It's tough. I think there are two kinds of risks in debt, and one is credit risk and the second is duration risk. You alluded to both of them, and unfortunately I don't think investors understand risk in debt.
So nobody does. Believe me, nobody does.
Nobody does. So now credit risk is the risk of lending to bad borrowers, and I do think you are in fragile times for credit. Could there be more downgrades? Could there be more defaults? Who knows? These are uncertain times. They've been 2 periods of moratorium, etc., etc. I don't think investors and retail investors should be taking credit risk. I don't think most people in mutual funds should be taking significant credit risk. You made a point about rating agencies. I think ratings are a decent proxy. There are times when they go wrong. The other way to do it is go look at the underlying portfolio. I actually see very few investors, like we put our monthly portfolio on the website. Go look at it. If you see the names and you see the names like Indian Railway Finance Corporation, NABARD, HDFC, you feel comfortable. That is comfortable rating. That is safety in debt investing. If there are names that you completely are unaware of, that is, a problem. So I think that's one way. The second thing you said is duration risk. Duration risk, and I'm so glad you alluded to this whole gilt fund thing. Duration risk is obviously the risk of your debt fund losing money, at least in mark to market, because of interest rates moving up and down. And I worry when I see so many investors running to gilt funds, because they've probably seen 15% return in 1 year, are expecting that when rates have fallen, and that is not going to happen. They don't realize that if there's a 1% change in interest rates, there could be a 5 to 6% loss in their fund. And there is no way they can take that. In fact, we look at the analysis of gilt funds, and people always come in after there's a huge return, and they always leave at the wrong time. So this timing goes.
That's the case with almost every fund.
I mean, but it's really bad. With equities, it's a little better. With fixed income, it's terrible.
Okay.
I am going to give you a 3-point framework to do debt investing. One, avoid credit risk.
Avoid credit risk. Okay.
Match the maturity of your goal to the duration of the fund, and I'll give you an example. So you do 3 things. You divide your money into 3 buckets. This is what I do for my personal money. Money I need in less than 3 months, and I park it into overnight and liquid funds. It doesn't matter how low the rates are. That is money I need at any point. I just park it into an overnight and liquid fund of any AMC, and I think that will be okay. Any decent AMC will have a good overnight and liquid fund. Just put it there. Okay. Money I need between 3 months and 3 years. I find arbitrage funds very tax efficient. I know they've become popular recently, but we've been running one since 2014. I think they are very tax efficient, especially after 1 year when you pay only 10% tax.
Correct.
And again, an arbitrage fund is not a liquid fund. So if you look at its month-on-month returns, कि month में एक बार negative हो गया या कम हो गया, again, it's a bad idea. But over 3 years, 1 year, 1.5 years, I think you'll be absolutely fine. Over 3 years, there are these products, one of which I run called Bharat Bond, but these roll down kind of target maturity structures. They're open-ended FMPs in some way. And what they do is they buy bonds and they hold them to maturity. Now, if you have a 4-year goal, buy a 4-year roll down. It will buy bonds, hold it to maturity. It's quasi FD in structure. So there's no, over the holding period, there's actually no duration risk.
Are there exit options? I'm sorry, but in a Bharat Bond ETF, like you said, there is an exit option before the...
You can exit any day.
Because it's exchange traded.
It's exchange traded, and even if you don't have a demat account, there's a fund of funds that buys the underlying ETF. So that's also, you can exit like a regular mutual fund any day. So you can buy any day, you can sell any day. It's low cost. And like right now, I mean, I'll give you the example of Bharat Bond. There's a 2023 Bharat Bond. There's going to be a 2025 next week. There's a 2030. There's a 2031. Depending on your goal, you just match it with the year of the Bharat Bond. And soon there'll be more of these.
So you're saying, so from what I understood, the advice for a safe player would be if it's very short-term money, go for overnight and liquid.
Yes.
If it's 3 months to 3 years, go for arbitrage. And you're saying maybe a post-tax 5-ish% is what you can expect from an arbitrage right now?
4.5, 5.
4.5, 5. I never thought we'd be considering those good returns, but hey, these are crazy times.
And you have to remember that. Yeah, go ahead, complete your answer.
Anything above that would be something which is more of a buy and hold kind of a debt rather than, so something that doesn't take interest rate exposure, risk exposure kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Products.
Sorry?
There are lots of those products in the market.
Okay. Excellent. Sounds good. So, so again, coming back to equities, people are asked, let's say some well-meaning investor wants to get in right now. So there are lots of questions on what sector, what theme. Pharma's already rallied. What's going to happen to IT? Is it value versus growth? Post a recovery, post a crisis, it's value that always takes off, and growth stocks lag. Then the top 10 stocks are super overvalued. Reliance has gone up 2 times already. Should we go for mid caps? So there's a lot of confusion. Let's say when I want to get into equities, it's not a very clear-cut answer for me as to where I should get in. So what kind of, is there any specific sector, any theme that investors should be playing right now? Is it a time to get into value again, because certain value funds have now rallied? For example, dynamic asset allocation. Is that a category to consider for an equity player? Which categories make sense and for whom? So if, let's say I'm a high risk taker with a long-term horizon, I'm a medium-term kind of an equity investor, and if what do you advise for both of these categories of people?
Okay, so again, I'll break this up into some kind of framework. And I think, in equity investing, we do a lot of theme chasing and sector chasing and trying this and past performance. It really doesn't work. I think 80% of your portfolio has to be the core and the basics. So let's talk about what works in the basics. And then 20% of your portfolio can be satellite, and I'll share some options for satellite. I think in your core, if you are a conservative or moderate investor, I love dynamic asset allocation funds. 70% of my money goes there. I just absolutely love the category. And especially at this time when markets have run up a little bit, it may go down. You get, when markets were down 35%, my BAF fund was down, I think 11-12%. I felt so comfortable as an investor. So I think that's a, straight short category. So either you do that, or you do your large and mid cap kind of fund. I think that's another great category that one can look at. So those are the two that really should form the core part of your portfolio.
Okay, in a 50-50 kind of a ratio?
It could be 50-50. I mean, it depends, right? Because dynamic asset allocation has debt also. So you have to look at your whole asset allocation. Like, I don't invest in debt outright. I do it via dynamic asset allocation. If
Okay.
you're an equity investor, you can do equity and then your debt can be separate. So that's a call you take.
So Radhika, I want to just interrupt you for a moment here. A thought came to mind. I mean, there were reports recently of, without taking names of AMCs, dumping credit into BAF and DAF kind of funds. So unknowing investors were ending up taking exposures into credit. You know, like because you're saying that we shouldn't take credit exposure. Now, if I'm getting into a BAF kind of a fund and I have lost control of the steering wheel about whether I should get into credit or not. Do you think that's something we should be worried about? Because there is no regulatory protocol for the BAF not taking a credit exposure or not.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I've been telling SEBI they should add a protocol. What I like to do is in my BAF and even my ARP funds, just do a quick check on the portfolio. BAFs don't hold that much debt, right? They hold 4-5 papers. Most BAFs hold 4-5-7 papers. Just do a check on the portfolio. We do something at Edelweiss which we call a fund casing, where we have rules for what we can put in our BAF. So right now our BAF is only AAA, but I think what you can do is you can just do a quick check on the portfolio and see what's comfortable.
So before getting into a BAF, make sure you check the debt holdings.
Even the arbitrage fund, please check.
Even the arbitrage funds, okay.
Actually, check the the most useful documents for an investor for a fund are not the past returns. They are the fact sheet, which gives you all the risk statistics, all the fees, etc. The presentation, which tells you the investment process, and the holdings, which tell you exactly what the fund is doing. Never invest in a fund without looking at these three documents.
Okay. Sorry, I'll pull you back to what you're saying, which is you were talking about the core, which is large and mid cap and BAF, and the satellite. So what about satellite? Very interesting. I would love to know.
Satellite, I think there are three buckets of satellite. One is everyone should have some exposure to international equities once they've done their Indian equities. Basic markets like US or China, etc. I think are great markets to look at. So I think you should definitely look at that. Second is you should have some mid-cap exposure. You will do it through your large and mid-cap fund, but you can look at mid and small cap as a satellite kind of holding. Third thing, people like to look at themes. Don't look at themes as very niche themes. For instance, look at themes that are genuinely different and you don't get through your multi-cap fund. One of the themes I like, for instance, is disruptive technology. I mean, now we do a fund that's US disruptive technology. That theme I don't get in the Nifty because in India, IT is like outsourcing. I mean, no 4G and cloud computing and autonomous cars happen in India. So try and the thing is you have to build a portfolio of things that are relatively uncorrelated. So if you're going to buy more banking, and 30% of your multi-cap fund is already banking, you're not achieving very much. So your satellite really has to be satellite and it has to be different from your core.
Okay. Perfect. A quick question about small caps, because there's a lot of talk on small caps and they've had a hammering of their lifetime since 2018. I mean, I have a friend who put in 40 lakhs in small caps in 2018. I only got to know recently that 40 lakhs is now 9 lakhs. And we're not talking about small cap MFs, we're talking about small caps. So he actually, with all his bravado, went in and bought 15-20 small caps based on tips. So is this the right time to be in small caps? I mean, you launched a small cap fund also, which had some crazy swings. It was up 23% and it was down 23%, and now it's kind of flattish. I think it's been a year since you launched. So if I'm an investor and if I'm considering small caps, would you say I should be getting into small caps right now?
So I think small cap has to be a part of your allocation. It can't be a very large part of your allocation, but I think, and one, you have to have a 7 to 10 year horizon with small cap. Like we launched the small cap fund at a time when actually small caps had corrected quite a bit.
Exactly.
Even after March, the investor experience in small cap was actually not bad. So I would say have small cap. And today, risk return favors small cap because they have significantly underperformed mid and large cap. So that's also something to keep in mind. But know that they're volatile. They could be down 50-70% in a year. And know that you really will make money over 7 to 10 years.
So don't look at it or you get a heart attack.
Yeah, you'll get a heart attack. I tell people the same same thing with a technology fund, right? It's done really well, but it's volatile. It's technology. It's disruptive technology. I mean, have this as a long-term holding.
Excellent. So if I'm to sum up what you're advising, core and satellite, your core should be a mix of large and mid and a dynamic asset allocation fund. And your satellite should be whatever it has to be based on your risk profile, of course. But basically, you're suggesting international disruptive tech, a little bit of small cap and mid cap basis your risk tolerance, and then hold on for dear life and don't look at your small and mid cap if you care about your health. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. Actually, don't look at your portfolio too much. It really helps.
Watch spot never boils.
Yeah.
But I have come across clients who check their portfolio 7 times a day, mutual funds, and it's difficult to explain to them that hey, your portfolio just changes once a day because it's
check once a quarter. Try once a quarter.
I wish that would be the best thing. No action bias. No sunk cost bias.
Actually, people check their portfolio about like 30 times a day because this guy, which is the phone, has WhatsApp. And then there's some news or some alert or some things happen in some. So your portfolio has moved far more than you've moved because of the news.
Absolutely. So very, very valuable insights. I know you're on a tight schedule, Radhika. If you could just give your concluding remarks, and I mean, you already said a lot, and I think it's been extremely insightful. It's been very helpful. Any words of advice, any mistakes one should look out for right now? Basically, you've spent more than a decade and a half in this industry and seen a lot of investors. Everybody falls into certain kinds of traps during specific points of time, and those behavioral traps are generally contingent upon what's happening in the market. So, any specific things to be cautious about? Anything to look out for right now, Radhika?
Oh, there's so many of them. But I think, in the correction, the kind of behavioral mistakes that people are making in this time. One is, I think the biggest thing that people are doing is taking too much action. So this desire to move from liquid, move to ARB, do this, do that. This is a time when asset classes will be volatile. You will see moves that you may have not seen ever. Just because they are volatile for a few days, don't forget your time horizon. So that's the biggest mistake. If you can't do anything, stay quiet. The second thing is to not try to jump from a frying pan into a fire or a fire into frying pan. So I see a lot of investors trying to avoid credit risk and taking their liquid money and parking it into gilt funds. You are jumping from credit risk, and I've actually seen this happen. You're jumping from credit risk into duration risk. So don't jump between a ditch and a well or frying pan and fire, whatever you want to call it. Just stay put and make sensible analysis. I think, I could talk for length about behavioral biases, but these are the two that I've seen a lot in this cycle, and I would really encourage investors to avoid.
So one, avoid the action bias, and two, avoid going from frying pan to fire. But one last comment, Radhika, isn't there a tactical case for investing a little money in gilt right now, given the spread between gilt and repo is at an all-time high? And there might be even further rate cuts. I mean, so if it is within an investor's bounds of risk tolerance, if they understand duration risk and have a 2-year kind of a horizon, then maybe a 20-30% gilt exposure in their debt portfolio, or not at all.
Look, if you understand risk, then if you understand credit risk, you should take credit risk. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
I just believe most people don't understand. That's my point.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's been, we've taken half an hour of your time, and I think it's been very insightful. Thanks a lot, Radhika. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Great talking to you. Stay safe, everyone.
You too. Bye.